So moving on to the next topic, new listemes via meaning change. Noted in the introduction of this chapter is that if the listeme change its meaning enough, it can earn itself a new dictionary or meaning. So as Quirk said, almost every word we use today has slightly different meaning from the one it had a century ago. And a century ago, it had a slightly different meaning from the one it had a century before that. So just like the example word nice, where it has gone from meaning stupid to meaning pleasant. As meaning changed, of course, the connection of the word with its original use becomes more obscure, which can lead to a pleasant feeling of surprise and discovery when one looks at the original interpretation. So there are few recognized paths that can change of words. One of those is the widening. So the word widen or widening used to describe a more specific concept, and over time comes to refer to a more inclusive concept, just like the example word bird. For instance, used to mean just young folk, but gradually has a broader modern meaning, which includes all folk, both young and old. So another example word is manage, used to mean specifically handle a horse, but now it means handling anything difficult successfully. So widening often happens as a result of metamorphical or fanciful application of a term. When a learner hears such a use and doesn't recognize that it's metamorphical, they simply conclude that the word has a more inclusive basic meaning, one that covers a broader range of situations. So on the other hand, narrowing change from a general meaning to a specific meaning. So just simply remember this when word with a similar meaning comes along and takes over the original meaning. So example word is wife, from simply woman, but now refers specifically as a married woman. So another example is the word accident, means specifically a happening, but today's meaning was unplanned unfortunate event. So another example is ledger, who used to be the unmarked word for book, but now refers specifically to a book of financial records. So part of the information connected to a listeme is note about its register. Words can be polite, rude, or neutral, suitable for high society. So when a word moves from lower register to a high register, or from having negative connotations to having positive connotations, we can say that it has undergone amelioration. So example of this is in the second slide, the word nice has undergone amelioration. So as you can see, it used to have a negative meaning, stupid or simple, and now of course it means a nice. So also word fun, which means foolish, crazy, and dazed. But over time, it came to mean over-infatuated and dazed with love. From there, it just came to mean in love with, and then affectionate towards, so losing the negative sense entirely. So, pejoration is what happens when a word moves downwards, socially or emotionally. So, example is bully. So, as we all know, bully is now means an abusive person. But it used to have a positive meaning, means sweetheart or lover. So we saw that bully used to have a positive meaning, sweetheart or lover, and now that it known now as abusive person. So though changing the word may mask the underlying problem of social prejudice, it in a superficial way, temporarily, but it can't help for long without a corresponding change in the underlying cultural attitude towards the people referred by the term. So lastly is conversion do sometimes give neologisms and having meaning change. One kind of conversation that frequently used in a neologisms is the conversion of a proper name. Like for example, Watt. James Watt, the inventor of a steam engine. So a common noun, in this case, Watt, a unit power, particularly electric power. So this kind of conversion is often used to refer to an invention or discovery of the person whose name it is, or sometimes as a verb or adjective describing a characteristic way of behaving or speaking that is associated with the person's name, just like James Watt. So some words derived in this way are galvanize, teddy bear, Kafkaski, Darwinian, and sandwich. So another instance of this type of conversion is the use of the official trademark proper name of company on their product or their product. A recent one is the verb to Google, meaning to execute an internet search on term from the meaning of the dominant search engine, Google. So the question is are these words really new?
So, hi, good morning. I am Dipay and I am here to report about new words by economizing clippings. In morphology, clipping is the process of forming a new word by dropping one or more syllables from a polysyllabic word such as fridge from refrigerator, fun from phonetic, mic from microphone, fax from facsimile, ammo from ammunition, flu from influenza, plane from aeroplane, and many more. Recently, carb has come into general use, a clip form of carbohydrates. Although often in clippings, main stress of the syllable of the word is retained. In clipping the word raccoon to coon or opossum to possum, the initial unstressed syllable is dropped. When the clipping has two syllables, it is usually considered as ideal word of English. Stress-wise, it's nearly always a trochee. A word is often clipped because it comes into more common usage. Its frequency count increases. In clip form, it generally has the same denotative meaning as the word it comes from, but it's regarded as more informal. And the presence of clipping is because of the speakers who prefer a more quick and easy to pronounce version rather than to use full long words to identify the concept. The term clipping is also known as a clip form, clip word, shortening, and truncation. Some of these clippings can also be qualified as backformations. Backformation is the process of forming a new word by removing actual or supposed affixes from another word. Refrigerator contains several subparts that look like English affixes. Re, ate, and or. It could be that the fridge part is just the part that speakers assume is the unaffixed central stem of the word. Burger is a clip word from hamburger, but it can also be qualified as a folk etymology since ham is a meat-related stem of English. Folk etymology is a process that adapts unknown words or parts of words to known ones in certain languages. Burgers are made of beef, not ham, and the original item was named after the German town Hamburg. Indeed, burger often occurs in a compound with other words that specify what kind of burger it is. Buffalo burger, veggie burger, beef burger, or what's on it, cheeseburger, which supports the idea that burger itself is understood to refer to a generic grilled patty sandwich, and the compounded element is required to indicate what the content of the sandwich is. Nicknames are also formed by clipping. Pete from Peter, Sue from Susan, Jeff from Jeffrey, Chris from Christopher, and etc. And adding the Germanic diminutive suffix "I" used in many English nicknames, Jemmy, Betty, Archie. The name Elizabeth has both primary and secondary stressed syllables, Elizabeth, and the many nicknames form this long name use of these two syllables as the initial stressed syllable in the trochaic ones. Lizzie, Lisbeth, Liza, Lisa, Betty, Libby, and Bessie, as well as Liz, Beth, Bess, and Bets are all versions of Elizabeth, some of which, like Haiti, have entered the language as independent names. In other words, clipping refers to part of a word that serves for the whole.
Family of inventions is called initialisms, and it has two main subgroups: acronyms, which are a collection of initials that are pronounced as a single phonological word according to the spelling conventions of English, and abbreviation, where the letters are read out one at a time. Franklin Roosevelt initiated many programs in 1930s with such name, which commonly came to be referred by their initials: the CCC, the WPA, the CWA, and FERA. These programs and their initialisms are long gone. The tendency of the American Armed Forces to initialize everything in sight also had a big impact on common usage around this time. Since such a large percentage of the population was involved one way or another with military in 1940s, initialisms like GI, AWOL, SNAFU, and radar entered the language during this period. Since then, initialisms have become a completely accepted way of referring to organization in American English. Very often, an organization or group will pick a phrase for their name based entirely on the word that will result when it's initialized. One of many one-line initialism lists, for instance, is Ben's incredible big list of initialisms and acronyms, Biblia for short. It is actually one of the smaller such lists. Many acronym dictionaries for institutional and scientific use contain tens of thousands of entries. The main thing of note for us is that abbreviation and acronyms are now being formed on a daily basis by millions of internet users. Most will die the day they are coined, but a few will persist, and the net effect will be that new lisms enter the new language. In one way, initialisms and acronyms are an extreme form of clipping, especially in military speak. Acronyms and clipping cohabit formably in several isms. Clip words can be compounded, as in CENTCOM from Central Command, or a phrase can undergo a combination of clipping and initializing, as in ANSCOM for the United Nations Special Commission, or COMDEX, or the Computer Dealer's Exposition. These initialisms blend clipping and initializing freely, partly to create a final form that will be easily pronounceable as an English word.
So let's proceed to the next topic, building new words by putting listem together. Affixation and compounding. The affix listem can usually mix and match with the listems they attach. If you put together an affix and a stem in a new way, you've created a new word. People make new words like this all the time, of course. Very often, though, the newly formed words don't survive very long. In most cases, someone has made a new word in the sense that they create a new phonological word. If a complex word's meaning is clearly derived from the meanings of its parts, as in chair plus S, it doesn't seem accurate to say that we're looking at a new listem. This phonological word is made out of existing listems and their meanings, and the meaning of the whole is entirely predictable. It's only when a new combination of affix plus stem comes to the slightly idiomatic, with a meaning that you couldn't
really guess from the meanings of its parts that we really have a new listem. At that point, it's fair to say a new word has entered the language. O plus some and ter plus if plus ik used to have predictable meanings when they were first formed. Inspiring awe, inspiring terror, respectively, but after a while they became idiomatized. At that point, the language had two listems, whose meaning were connected to the meanings of their component parts. Suffixation is one of the two main ways new words enter the language, and we will spend a considerable amount of time studying it in the next two chapters. Compounding occurs when two independently meaningful roots are directly combined to form a new, complex word, usually a noun or adjective. Examples of each are given below. So far, the examples of compounding we've seen have all used listems that are themselves complete phonological words. In fact, some of the most lasting compound made in modern English are from the listems that never occur by themselves. Scientific and technical vocabulary is almost entirely created out of listem borrowed from Greek and Latin. Similarly, tele is an element of the modern compounds television, telephone, telekinesis, telegraph, and telecast. Because of this listem, always occur attached to other elements, it's more difficult to detect their meaning contribution in a given compound. You can't usually look at their meaning by itself, but in principle, the complex listem they are a part of are formed according to the same process of composition plus idiomatization that applied to all the other listems formed by compounding.
Good day! We are going to talk about Chapter 4. Where do words come from? In this chapter, we look at some of the ways words came into a language and how old words can change into new words. Every child discovers their own set of listems. So what is a listem, by the way? Listem is a word or phrase, or according to Steven Pinker, a stretch of sounds that must be memorized because its sound or meaning does not conform to some general rule. Also called a lexical item, all words, irregular forms, and idioms are listems. Each children develop a listems potentially a little bit different from the others, but they have to have a speech stream to work with. The speech stream, of course, comes from the adults and older children around the child who have already accomplished this feat for themselves. So, the listems a child identifies in the speech stream will depend entirely on the listems produced by adults and older children, whose listems depended on the speech of the people around them when they were learning language. And of course, that community's listems would depend on the listems of the older people around them. The listem inventory of any language changes from year to year. So, why do we have new words? Most new words are created by some innovative manipulation of an already existing word or words. We also have what we call as new word by mistake. One common way in which new listems can get pulled out of a speech stream that never contained them is via the same process that gave us mongrels, acorns, and the game telephone, misparsing a word or phrase. If the misparse has legs, or if it makes enough sense, it may well enter the language as a new listem. In this way, words that were originally single listems in the mind of an adult speaker can come to be complex words containing two or more listems in the mind of the learner. Misparses come in two main varieties, back formations and folk etymologies. A back formation is a subspecies of a folk etymology that results in a totally new listem entering the language. Back formation means a word that is formed from an already existing word from which it appears to be a derivative, often by removal of a suffix. Say for example, laze from lazy and edit from editor. Now, what is folk etymology? It is sometimes called popular etymology, analogical information, or etymological reinterpretation. It is a change in a word or phrase resulting from the replacement of an unfamiliar form by a more familiar one. Example of a word created or changed to folk etymology includes the English dialectal form sparrowgrass, or originally from Greek asparagus, remade by analogy to the more familiar words sparrow and grass, thus resulting to a new word sparrowgrass. This video report is presented to you by Queenie Laña.
Are these words really new? The answer is generally no. At this moment in time, still, there have been no cases where words are created purely out of nothing, where words just pops up like that of a chat head. Nobody just actually sit there, think, and comes up with a completely new word. There are only a few cases where words are created purely out of nowhere. For instance, the word Kodak. The inventor of a new photographic process, Mr. Eastman, invented the word out of nowhere in 1888 to serve as a trade name for his product and company. The internet search engine Google derived its name from another word out of nothing. The word for one with 100 zeros, Google, also Googleplex, was invented on the spot by a mathematician's nephew when asked what he thought a one with 100 zeros should be called. People usually get new words by modifying old words. Moving on to borrowing. What you can see on the table is an example of borrowed words. Borrowing occurs when a community that speaks one language comes into contact with a community that speaks another language and adopts a word from that community. As English borrowed spaghetti from Italian, or karate from Japanese. It is actually the primary source of genuinely new words in English. We have only lightly tackled or touch this topic because this will be tackled on by the next chapters by other groups. Moving on to what makes a new word stick. The forces which drive both the creation and the loss of listemes are cultural. Most new listemes comes into common use because of a sudden general need to refer to the concept they name. The word Chad, year 2000, known to nearly no one, suddenly became a term familiar in American mass culture when the presidential election seemed to depend on hanging ones. In late 1990s, weblogs became more and more common. When millennium year came, it becomes clipword blog and gradually became broadly known and used until up to these days. You likely don't know what kind of animal a gilt is, but if you lived in a farm community which raised a pig, you'll surely know what it is. People have words for the concept they need or want to talk about. Words for concepts that they don't need to talk about much gradually becomes less and less frequent, sometimes disappearing from the language entirely. When a needed word remains specialized to one particular group, it becomes part of the jargon. What you can see in the table is an example of jargon. Jargon is just specialized terminology used by a particular group to serve its everyday communicative needs. So, that is example of jargons. Moving to slang words. The infinite mutability of slang has to do with the dynamics of fashion and status, in-group and out-group, what's hot and what's not. You can probably name 20 slang expressions that appeared and perhaps disappeared in this generation. Some slang expressions become more widely used and hung on longer than average or enter the language and culture more broadly and permanently. These are the example of the slang words you can see in that table. So that's it for our topic. We hope that you learned something out from our discussions.